These are the 4 reasons why you should never hold your real estate in your personal name. Number 1, unlimited liability from your property. If you're holding property in your personal name and something happens to your property, for example, a tenant slips and falls, or maybe a boiler explodes, or an asbestos occurs, or whatever happens to the property, then the owner of the property, which is you, has unlimited exposure. Meaning, if there's a judgment for $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, the responsible party is going to be you, and they're going to be able to go after you and all of your personal property and your personal assets. So bank accounts, precious metals, brokerage accounts, other properties, anything you own is fair game. And it doesn't really matter how much equity is in this property. This is one of the big misconceptions. So even if the property is underwater and it has no equity, or maybe has very little equity because you've got a loan on it, or maybe it's just not worth that much, it doesn't matter. This property could have 0 equity, but if there's a $1 million judgment, then you are personally responsible for that $1 million judgment. Number 2 is insurance is not going to help you. There's really 3 issues with insurance. Number 1 is the exclusions. A lot of people are making their monthly premium payment thinking they're insured, but when it actually comes time to collect on the policy, they realize that their accident or their incident is not covered by their policy. There's so many things called exclusions, and these policies are so freaking complicated to read that you may not realize that somewhere buried in that policy, that excludes your incident from being able to recover. The second issue is most people are underinsured. People have $1 million policy or a $2 million policy, but as we talked about, if somebody has a major slip and fall or some boiler explodes, well, then the judgment may be for $5, $10, $15, $50 million. And with legal fees these days, I can tell you that $1 million policy will probably be eaten up mostly by legal fees getting to a trial and defending your claim. So most people are underinsured. And number 3 is that the insurance company may not even be around when it's time to collect. A lot of these insurance companies these days are either online or just very small outfits that if there's a major catastrophic event and it's time for you to collect, they may not be there. So it's really important that if you have insurance, which you should, make sure you go with a reputable insurance company. Before I get to number 3, if you're finding value in this video, smash that like button. But number 3 is your property is exposed. So same situation, but instead of a tenant slipping and falling or something happening to the property, something happens to you. Most people forget that we as individuals are these walking liabilities out there. We're always there day in and day out, exposing ourselves to liability. So for example, you might get into a car accident, or you may back up from your driveway and run over the kid on the skateboard, or you may get into a business dispute. Something happens to you unrelated to your properties. Well, in that case, if you have a car accident and there's a $1 million claim against you, that I can come after your property. I can come after anything that you personally own, bank accounts, precious metals, and properties. And so by having some kind of an entity structure actually own the property instead of you directly, then you may be able to avoid the creditor getting a hold of your hard-earned assets. And number 4 is privacy. Now, we should never rely on privacy as our exclusive way of protecting our assets, but I used to work for a plaintiff's attorney, and so I know that the first thing that somebody does when you get into a car accident or some dispute is they're going to do an asset search on you. And so if they do an asset search and you own the property in your personal name, they're going to find it. They're going to know exactly what properties you own, what bank accounts you own, what brokerage accounts you own. It's very easy information to obtain. And so by having some kind of a structure, some entity structure between you and your property, it becomes much harder for a plaintiff's lawyer to actually find out whether there's any assets for them to go collect when there's a judgment, because most people forget there's a 2-step process. Step number 1 is getting the judgment. I've got to get the judgment against the person first. And number 2 is I've got to collect. And if you know anything about plaintiff's lawyers, you know they work on a contingency fee basis, meaning they don't get paid unless they're able to recover. So they're not going to go after you if they can see that you don't have any assets or they can't find any assets. They're much more likely to settle for insurance policies because they don't want to go spend 2 or 3 years of their life getting a judgment against you if there's nothing there to collect.